Coming up. The impeachment hearing of Kenyan Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is delayed. His lawyer says he is in the hospital. U.S. President Joe Biden heads to Germany a week later than planned after Hurricane Milton ravaged the southeast and grounded him last week. And we'll hear from an expert on ways to support people with autism through advocacy and behavioral health services. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. There's been a major development Thursday in the impeachment hearing of Kenyan Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. A lawyer representing Gachagua has asked the Senate to pause the proceedings for a couple of days over Gachagua being hospitalized due to intense chest pains. Mohammed Yusuf has more on the hearing.
Kenyan security forces blocked roads leading to the parliament buildings as the Senate opened a second day of hearings ahead of the vote on whether to remove Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua from office. The embattled Deputy President is accused of misappropriating public funds, practicing ethnic politics and acting to undermine the government, a claim denied by Gachagua. Last week, the National Assembly voted to impeach Gachagua. On Thursday, senators heard Gachagua's defense against the accusation that he's unfit to be in office. Kenyans are closely following the proceedings that have been taking place in the past 3 weeks and may end today.
The way I look at this impeachment is largely like a democratic process. It's part of our democracy. I don't think it's a strange. I know it's happening for the first time in our country, but this is a varied constitutional process that is going on, and one of the merits of this process is that it's going to test the limits of our constitution.
I think maybe according to the evidence as I heard from the Senate and the lawyers yesterday, I think if the deputy can be given an opportunity for the second chance, he can prove himself to work for the Kenyans, and so that we can maintain the peace and maybe you can go on as usual.
So when it comes to national, I find it to be a very dangerous ground where they are taking us, because we should not be having such high value politicians being impeached on grounds which are not real, or rather things that have been cooked and you decide, okay, this one. That I find it to be incorrect.
The Senate is scheduled to vote and conclude the impeachment motion today. If 2/3 of the senators vote in favor of the motion, the position of Deputy President will be vacant. That is, if Gachagua does not challenge it in court. The President is required to appoint a new one within 2 weeks. Mohammed Yusuf, VOA News, Nairobi.
For more on Kenya's Deputy President's hospitalization, I'm joined live by Kenya Television Network reporter Francis Ontomwa. Francis, what more do we know about Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's illness?
At this stage, the health of the Deputy President is a matter of public speculation. No one truly knows what is happening at this point. The last time we heard was from his lead lawyer, Paul Mwite, who said that the Deputy President developed chest pains, and then he had to be hospitalized at a Karen Hospital, which is one of the leading hospital facilities here in the capital, Nairobi. So basically how it started playing out is that the Deputy President was just about to start getting cross-examined by the lawyers, but he was a no-show. He was missing in the chambers. Then when it was sought to be whether he was in the presence of Parliament, his lawyer said he wanted to check with his other legal team, and that is when it played out, and they came with a notification to say that he had been hospitalized. And at this point, really, no one knows truly how he is at this point. And what we've heard also from the lawyers is that at this point they would want the head of state to come out and give a statement on the health of the Deputy President.
So we got a few minutes here, Francis. So now with the Deputy President absent, what's the Senate's next step to get this hearing concluded?
Well, it's all systems go already in the Senate. The Senate has already made a vote that they will be continuing with the impeachment process, regardless of whether he is present in person or not. So as we speak, a process is going on. The Senate is taking a vote. And this, you need to take note that the lawyers for the deputy president walked out of this process in solidarity. They said they cannot continue in a process where they're not getting instructions from their client. So at this point, it looks like a one-sided process, but the impeachment is going on, Esther.
Thank you so much, Francis. KTN's reporter Francis Ontomo live for us from Nairobi, Kenya. U.S. President Joe Biden heads to Germany Thursday, a week later than planned, in a compressed timeline after Hurricane Milton grounded him last week. Both he and Germany's leader are facing mounting pressure over their support for Ukraine. VOA White House correspondent Anita Powell reports.
President Joe Biden this week makes good on his plan to visit Germany to discuss pressing matters in Ukraine and elsewhere. And Chancellor Olaf Scholz stressed the importance of this one-day visit and praised the U.S.-Germany relationship. Ukraine tops the agenda, with the White House announcing Wednesday that Biden released another $425 million security assistance package.
The president believes that this is felt very strongly about this trip, about one of our partners, allies, that has been steadfast, certainly in partnership as it relates to Ukraine's defense. And the president really wanted to make sure to go to Germany to thank Chancellor Scholz directly.
Biden intended to go to Berlin last week, but Hurricane Milton spoiled his plans, forcing him to also reschedule a meeting on Ukraine security that he now will lead virtually. The White House said that Biden would not meet face-to-face with Ukraine's leader as originally planned. Scholz met with President Volodymyr Zelensky last week to hear his 5-point victory plan, which includes an invitation to join NATO before the war ends. Zelensky presented the plan to his parliament Wednesday.
Цей план є мостом до проведення результативного саміту миру, який дійсно поставить крапку в війні. Тобто цей план не на заміну нашій мирній ініціативі, а щоб саме посилити позиції України заради наближення до миру. Ми можемо зробити це у взаємодії. Всі наші партнери розраховуємо і на підтримку.
NATO's new Secretary General was non-committal, saying Wednesday that Ukraine would, one day, be a member. This grinding war compels the U.S. and allies to work together to counter a coalescing crew of adversaries with interests in Ukraine's fate. General James Jones, a national security advisor to former President Barack Obama, told VOA.
The Iranian, Russian, Chinese, and North Korean alliance, if you want to call it that, is very dangerous, and we cannot pretend that it isn't. And we need to do those things like strengthening NATO, strengthening the EU, strengthening the bilateral relationships, and making sure that Vladimir Putin doesn't prevail in Ukraine.
Analysts say this trip could be important to Ukraine's future.
I think that Biden could use his time in Germany to reiterate the importance of support for Ukraine.
Germany and the U.S. both have seen protests over their support of Israel in the war that ignited in Gaza a year ago. At the same time, both countries are reporting rises in anti-Semitic incidents in the past year. And both leaders, who describe themselves as center-left, are facing political challenges from right-leaning groups critical of their government's support of Ukraine and Israel. Scholz has recently lost ground to the ascendant Alternative for Germany, a far-right party that opposes immigration and that the German judiciary calls suspected extremists. This visit comes at a crucial time. Both leaders know well how the wars of the last century affected their nation's fortunes and futures. And now, these two men must strive together to see that another conflict does not swallow the world. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
A federal grand jury in California has indicted 2 men from Sudan for tens of thousands of cyber attacks on businesses, hospitals, and government organizations in the United States and elsewhere. Ahmed Salah Yusuf Omer and Allah Salah Yusuf Omer were charged in the U.S. District Court in Central California Wednesday with conspiracy and computer damage caused by the group Anonymous Sudan from 2023 to 2024. The victims included the U.S. Department of Defense, Justice Department, State Department, and companies such as Microsoft and Riot Games. The Israeli military says it is looking into whether Hamas top leader Yahya Sinwar was killed in a military operation in Gaza. The military says 3 militants were killed during operations in Gaza. It says the identities of the 3 have not been confirmed, but it is checking the possibility that one of them was Sinwar. Campaigning in the U.S. presidential elections is in its final stages, and every 4 years, the candidate zeroes in on swing states. These battlegrounds, unlike most states that consistently favor one party, can help between elections and often determine who wins the White House. VOA's Jackson Vunganyi explains.
Every 4 years, the U.S. presidential race zeroes in on swing states. These battlegrounds, unlike most states that consistently favor one party, can flip between elections and often determine who wins the White House. With just a few states typically in play, campaigns pour resources into those crucial arenas. Their electoral votes frequently decide the outcome, making them the focus of intense campaigning. Understanding swing states is essential to grasping how America picks its president, shaping strategies, potentially altering the nation's political landscape.
Swing states are crucial to winning the White House in 2024. These battleground states see the fiercest and most expensive political campaigning, and their voters have significant influence in the election. So how does this work? Most states are predictably red or blue, Republican or Democratic, so their elections aren't competitive. But in swing states, the outcome can go either way. A candidate needs 270 out of 538 electoral college votes to win the presidency, usually through winner-takes-all state elections. Swing states provide the deciding votes, allowing candidates to pass the threshold. This year, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin hold the keys to the White House. Among them, there are 93 electoral college votes that could go either red or blue. These states have thin electoral margins because of a near balance between Republican and Democratic voters. Shifting demographics and competing views between urban and rural areas make the outcomes unpredictable. Even small changes can tip the entire state, giving Kamala Harris or Donald Trump the electoral college edge. We've seen this happen before. In 2016, Trump won Pennsylvania by a 0.7% margin, securing 20 electoral college votes and the presidency. 4 years later, Joe Biden reclaimed the state by 1.2%, helping him win the White House. That same year, Biden won a thin majority of 12,000 votes in Georgia, tipping the state from red to blue for the first time in almost 3 decades. Swing states are unpredictable, but one thing is certain: they hold a massive influence in 2024. In these areas, every vote matters.
That was a look at the battleground states that will potentially decide the 2024 presidential race.
Friday on Africa 54, we'll explain the Electoral College process, so be sure to tune in. Today, we're spotlighting a woman from South Africa who is making a difference in her community by offering free legal services for women and advocating for their rights. Tamika Thambiran is also founder of a menstrual health rights network and offers support for marginalized groups in South Africa. Tamika, welcome to Africa 54. Tell us, why is the fight to access quality period products for schoolgirls in South Africa a top priority for you?
Thank you for having me, Esther. So the issue of period poverty is a top priority for me, especially in South Africa, because this is a phenomenon that's affecting about 7 million girls in South Africa. This means that about 7 million girls are missing out on school every single day across the country. And in a society that is already set up against women, this is just further perpetuating gender inequality and educational opportunities for girls. So in order to combat this issue, I've been working with a lot of partner organizations on the ground in South Africa to try and strategize ways that we can tackle this issue of period poverty, either through advocacy efforts or even strategic litigation.
Now let's move on to you, being the lawyer there in South Africa. Tell us about a litigation case, one litigation case where you sought justice and won.
So a very prominent case that was heard in the South African courts, and we actually received judgment in this case a few weeks ago, was the case that was brought by an organization called the Embrace Project, as well as a rape survivor. And this case sought to challenge rape laws in South Africa, specifically on the issue of consent, to the extent that these laws don't actually protect survivors of rape. In this case, I represented the Center for Human Rights and the Psychological Society, and we put forward a lot of information on how survivors respond in situations of sexual assault and how this affects their ability to refuse or withdraw their consent. Judgment was handed down a few weeks ago, and we were quite successful in this case. The provisions of the Criminal Law Act were declared unconstitutional, and we believe that this judgment is going to have a very significant effect in helping survivors attain justice. And as this case progresses to the Constitutional Court, I hope to be representing the Center for Human Rights and advocating for the justice of survivors.
It's amazing to see how young you are and doing great work now. What are you working on next?
So currently, I am an independent legal practitioner at the Johannesburg Bar, but I'm also the in-house counsel at the Center for Human Rights. So I have the task of litigating a number of human rights cases, from children's rights to rights involving persons with disabilities, women and girls' rights as well. So some of the cases that we have on at the moment are before regional mechanisms, such as the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, where we're advocating for the rights of children in Nigeria who have been severely impacted by accusations of witchcraft. So this is just some of the cases that we're working on. Some of the other work that I do is also on improving access to sexual and reproductive health rights, not just in South Africa, but also across the continent as well. And so we're really hoping to use advocacy and litigation to create an impact on the ground.
And very quickly, Tamika, where do you see the place of women in South Africa?
Right at the top. I think our Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya, is actually setting the example and paving the way. She was the first female Chief Justice that has been appointed in South Africa. The work that she has done throughout her career and the impact that she's making now just proves that when women are represented in positions of leadership, they can create a really big impact for women on the ground.
Tamika, many thanks. We got to mention that you are also a former Nelson Mandela Fellowship fellow. So thank you. Tamika Thambiran is a South African lawyer and founder of the Menstrual Health Rights Network. Still to come, advocating for children with autism. We'll be right back.
We live in the digital age, and parents across the world are dealing with the challenge of trying to manage screen time and to understand the content of their children's digital engagement. Even worse, some parents' use of technology is distracting them from their children. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will explore the new challenges of parenting in the digital age and long-term effects of smartphones on children's development. We'll also ask parents and experts on ways to overcome digital parenting struggles. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Lino Khmudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, soaring fuel prices in Nigeria are making it unaffordable for some workers to commute to their jobs, forcing them to quit. The trend is hitting low-income and informal workers especially hard. Fuel in Nigeria now averages 66 cents per liter, a 15% rise since September. There is the risk of further destabilization of the Nigerian labor market, where the unemployment rate stands at 33%. Turkey is deepening its cooperation with Somalia by sending a research ship to look for energy resources. Dorian Jones reports from Istanbul.
Turkey's research ship Oruç Reis, escorted by Turkish warships, set sail this month from Istanbul to Somalia to search for what are widely believed to be vast energy reserves. The deployment is part of an energy and security agreement between Turkey and Somalia, in what analysts say is an accelerating relationship. but they say growing regional tensions could threaten Ankara's aspirations.
Turkey needs Somalia and Ethiopia to play well together, and so this is vitally important for Turkish regional ambitions.
Tensions have been rising since January, when Ethiopia signed a memorandum of understanding with Somaliland, a region that has unilaterally declared independence from Somalia. Under the agreement, Ethiopia will secure sea access in exchange for recognizing the breakaway state. Somalia condemns the deal, accusing Ethiopia of infringing on its territorial integrity. Turkey is mediating the conflict, but the dispute is broadening after Egypt started shipping arms to Somalia.
Somalia's growing ties with Egypt can provide Somalia leverage to negotiate with Ethiopia on more favorable terms. So it could strengthen Somalia's bargaining power in its negotiations with Ethiopia. So if Egypt deepens its security ties with Somalia, Ethiopia might perceive it as a direct security threat. So this might increase the mistrust during the talks.
Egypt is at odds with Ethiopia over its damming of the Nile River. The tensions also threaten Somalia and Ethiopia's military collaboration against the al-Qaeda-linked group Al-Shabaab. Analysts say that while Ankara is still well placed to resolve the tensions because of its good ties with all parties, it needs diplomatic support.
Turkey should be can still be the lead mediator, but outside actors like the U.S., like the EU, like those in the Gulf, adding their weight to that to say, okay, look, this has gone on for quite some time. The longer this goes on, the greater the risk of miscommunication and miscalculation and some sort of conflictual outcome.
With Ankara investing heavily in Somalia militarily and diplomatically, analysts warn that any new conflict or even deepening instability in the war-torn region would threaten Turkey's goal of widening its influence. Dorian Jones, VOA News, Istanbul.
The National Institute of Health says the prevalence of autism in Africa is similar to other regions, but access to diagnosis and treatment is limited due to challenges such as a shortage of specialized healthcare professionals and resources. Africa 54's Paul Ndiho is here with a special guest. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. Thanks. Decoder Health, a non-governmental organization based here in Washington, advocates for children with autism spectrum disorder in the U.S. and Tanzania. Annie Litzwe, the founder and chief executive officer of Decoder Health, is here. Is at the forefront of debunking stigmas and raising awareness about autism globally, with specific focus on supporting people with ASD in Tanzania. Hello, Anne.
Hello, Paul.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start in Tanzania. You've been doing a lot of work in this area of autism. What does it take to do that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the challenges are astronomical. I mean, it ranges from stigmas to lack of infrastructure and capacity in order to treat children with autism. So my organization is specifically geared towards tackling those challenges.
How about on a continental level? This is something that goes beyond Tanzania, goes beyond the United States. You've been instrumental in doing some of this work across the region. What can you tell our audience about the issues people deal with when it comes to autism?
Oh, absolutely. So autism is a global health issue. We're seeing increased prevalence over the past several decades. For example, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention here in the United States have stated that 1 in every 36 children are born with autism. The World Health Organization have quoted that 1 in every 159 children are born with autism in Africa. And of course, the prevalence, the exact numbers are unknown, right? There's lack of data, or it's limited, but it is definitely a huge issue. And we're looking at specifically providing the therapy, the care, and also addressing some of those stigmas, which are a really large challenge for this population.
I have a cousin sister who was a kid who is autistic, but we didn't know until maybe later on in life. How big is that issue of stigma when it comes to dealing with this, especially in Africa?
Oh, it's a huge issue, and it really compounds the problem, because on top of dealing with understanding what autism is and providing care and therapy, parents also have to deal with the community and addressing those stigmas and everything that comes along with that. So it really further compounds the problem. Some of the stigmas are, especially in Africa, could be related to witchcraft. It could be related to curse, like people may say you have generational curse. And then sometimes it could be something as bad parenting. They may say, well, a child is behaving a certain way due to bad parenting or they're being disrespectful. But in actual reality, it's a natural neurodevelopmental disorder caused by autism.
How about here in the United States? You also do some work here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a founder and CEO of an organization called Dakota Health. And in the United States, we provide what we call ABA therapy, which stands for Applied Behavior Analysis Therapy for patients with autism. And we're looking at advancing that similar care and model to Tanzania.
Let's talk a little bit about how you get funded. How much of your own resources do you put into this to make sure that at least the people that you're trying to serve back in Tanzania get some help?
Well, right now it is self-funded. We are looking for additional funding from sources with similar mission. I do have a partner for the IT aspect. They're called Tiba Salama Digital Health App, and we're all coming together towards this great mission and working with other collaborators such as Litafo, which stands for Living Together Autistic Foundation. We all just come together to try to address this challenge, but it is self-funded.
When you've run into people who have autistic children, what are their stories? What do they share with you, and how can they get help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First and foremost, it starts off with acceptance. They tend to want to understand and accept that their child has autism. And at the same time, they want to learn more. How can they help them? Sometimes it comes together with having some denial, and that is okay. But with education and the right support and infrastructure, they get the help they need.
Very briefly, how can people reach out to you if they wanted to help, or how can you help those people who are looking for help?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. So we do have a website, www.dakotahealth.com, and we also have Instagram handles. If you look up Dakota Health, you should be able to find us there. We are looking for partners to come together towards this great mission because the need is there, the challenge is there, and I think together we can definitely help to make a difference in Tanzania and just overall around the world.
Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Would love to have you back very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul.
And Laswe is the founder and chief executive officer of Dakota Health. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Paul, for that very informative discussion. In late-breaking news, the Israeli foreign minister has just announced that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was killed today by Israeli troops. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.